Back in 2012, I was only 13 years old, just a child, still figuring out the world. At that age, I never thought I'd have to face something that would scar me for the rest of my life. I often spent time at my dad's house. Sometimes, when he and his girlfriend left early for work, they allowed me to sleep in their room. It felt normal then, nothing unusual, just the comfort of a bed I was familiar with. One morning, after he dropped his girlfriend off at work, he came back. I was lying in their bed, still sleepy, when things started to feel strange. I heard him moving around the room, lying down, getting up again. Then suddenly, I realized he was right above me. He turned me onto my back, and in that moment, my life shifted into something dark and terrifying. I didn't understand what was happening. I froze. Fear took over me. This was my father, someone I trusted, someone who was supposed to protect me. But instead, he was the one hurting me. My mind couldn't process it. I felt shocked, betrayed, and trapped. Afterward, I pulled myself together enough to get out of the room as quickly as I could. The rest of the day, I avoided him. We never spoke about it, and he acted as though nothing had happened. But inside me, something had shattered. For a while, the abuse stopped. But the damage didn't. Every now and then, he would pass me and make disturbing comments. Words like, "You're sexy," or "I want to do things to you." I hated those words. They made me feel dirty, confused, and unsafe, especially because they came from my own father. Years passed. By the time I was 17, things escalated again. One day, while I was at my best friend's house, he called and told me to come home. When I got there, he grounded me without explanation. I didn't even know what I had done wrong. A few days later, while we were sitting in the shop connected to the garage, the place where he usually smoked and watched movies, he asked me a question that made my stomach twist. He said, "Do you want to be ungrounded?" Of course I did. I was a teenager. I wanted my freedom, to go out with friends, to not feel trapped at home. But then he said, "What are you going to do for me if I unground you?" At first, I stayed quiet, staring at the movie on the screen, hoping he would drop it. But he didn't. He kept pushing, repeating himself, until finally he said the words, "I want you to send me pictures." I was confused, horrified. But he insisted. He told me I was ungrounded, as long as I agreed. That night, I left the house, tried to escape the feelings inside me. I longboarded for hours, not knowing who to tell or how to even begin explaining what was happening. It didn't stop there. Soon after, I asked him if I could go on a family trip with my best friend to Minneapolis. He said I couldn't go, unless I gave him what he wanted. He demanded 3 pictures of me, unclothed, in different poses. When I resisted, he stood up and said, "Fine, I'll take them myself." Terrified, I quickly agreed to do it alone. I cried as I went downstairs, confused and broken. Eventually, I took the pictures, sent them to him, and deleted them immediately. But even then, he told me they weren't good enough. He made me take more in better lighting. That was one of the lowest points of my life. I felt like there was no escape, no safe place, and no one who would understand. For a long time, I kept it all to myself, burying the pain, pretending everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. The memories haunted me every day. Everything changed when I started dating Brandon. He was the first person who made me feel safe enough to open up. One night, I stayed awake for hours, finally pouring out my story to him. He listened. He believed me. And most importantly, he encouraged me to tell someone who could help. With his support, I told my grandmother, who was also my guardian. It was one of the hardest conversations of my life, but once I spoke the words out loud, I felt a small weight lift off my chest. The very next day, we went to the police station. I filed a report. Speaking to the officer was terrifying, but I pushed through. The investigation began. I had to meet with a detective, share every detail, even show the text messages my father had sent me. It was exhausting, painful, and humiliating at times, but necessary. Months later, a warrant was issued for his arrest. I'll never forget the day he was finally caught, November 5, 2014. It was just before my birthday, and oddly enough, the same day Brandon and I were celebrating an anniversary. That day felt like a turning point, like justice was finally beginning. The road didn't end there. Court dates were scheduled, postponed, and rescheduled over and over. I met with the state's attorney, went over my story again and again, preparing for trial. Finally, in June 2015, the trial began. For 3 long days, I sat in that courtroom, facing my father. When it was my turn to testify, I told the jury everything. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, sitting just feet away from him, speaking about what he had done to me. But I did it. And they believed me. The jury found him guilty on multiple charges: sexual exploitation of a minor, aggravated incest, and rape in the 4th degree. He is now in jail, awaiting sentencing. I don't know exactly what the future holds, but I do know this: he can't hurt me anymore. Telling my story hasn't been easy, but I share it because I want others to know they are not alone. If you've experienced abuse, it is not your fault. You deserve to be heard, to be believed, and to find safety. Keeping it inside will only make the pain heavier. Speaking out can be terrifying, but it can also be the first step toward healing.